we'd say 0.68 xg of chances occurring due to his sweeping. So at the moment, my expected saves model basically has De Gea saving about...
That's blown me away a little bit, John. That has. I wasn't expecting that.
Overall, the good definitely outweighs the bad, and he's doing better than average. Whereas,
yes, guys, welcome back to another video here on the Andy #1 channel. Today it's another Goalkeeping Week in Review, where I'm joined by data scientist, Twitter extraordinaire, everything else. What else do you do, John? You're an astrophysicist, data science, football statistician. You're a man of numbers. You should be on countdown. John Harrison, you're back with us, back with me again to chat about something that I know that you get a lot of interaction with on your thread, and something that is it's been spoken about quite a bit recently. We're actually going to be talking about
Dean Henderson and his performance against Tottenham, and also whether he's staked enough of a claim to be Manchester United's #1 going forwards.
It's a big topic this week, but before we get into the main content that we're going to be chatting about, first question I've got to ask you, John, is you were top of my fantasy Premier League, but you've had an absolute shocker this week.
Yeah, no, indeed. So I decided, rather than get Lingard and who was it? I was going to get Lingard and someone else on my wild card, and I went for I was going to get Lingard and Son in on my wild card, and I decided instead to go on a 1 week punt to get Sterling and Gundogan, assuming they'd smash in loads against Leeds, and they did not, and that was a big point swing. So I'm dropped down to second, I think.
I benched all of my Leeds players, and then thankfully Diaz didn't play for Man City, so Dallas got the call.
Dallas.
17 points off the bench. The code to my fantasy Premier League team league is somewhere around here, so if you're not already involved, get yourself involved in that. See if you can knock John off second spot now, as he's going for top spot. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do. If you like this video, click that like button and comment down below. Who do you think should be playing for Man United before we start? Should Henderson keep his spot? Should De Gea come back into it? Let us know before, and then let us know after you've watched the video as well, to see whether or not your opinion matches with the stats that John has put together. Right, now, talking about Henderson's performance against Spurs, just quickly. Now, I think Henderson's been playing pretty well the last few games, especially. I mean, he's come in because I think De Gea's wife's had a baby, so Henderson got pulled in. Now, what caught me about the Tottenham game was, if you look at just little highlight clips on Twitter or whatnot, it seems to be a lot of sweeping up. He seems to be a very aggressive goalkeeper with a very high starting line, which seems to suited that game especially. And there were a couple of good opportunities that he thwarted, especially Harry Kane was one. There was a couple of others as well. What does your model, John, tell us about his sweeper keeper, Manuel Neuer type activity?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. The sweeping was probably the highlight of Dean Henderson's game against Tottenham. So he swept up 3 times outside his area to prevent Tottenham from creating chances, and that was actually the highest of any goalkeeper in a single game in the Premier League this year. So it's sort of the most sweeper keepery performance we've seen in the Premier League. And yeah, so the first one he swept up was to stop Son getting in. But Son was being tracked heavily by a Man United defender, so my model only gives that about a 4% chance if he didn't come, that would result in a goal, whereas the next 2 were much bigger chances. So he rushed out and cleared it before Lucas Moura got in, and then, like you said, he rushed out and stopped Harry Kane getting what would be clean through one-on-one in the centre of the pitch. So those 2 chances my model had as being 20% chance that Lucas Moura might score, or a 44% chance that Harry Kane would score if he hadn't have come out, because Maguire was so far behind him and Kane was so central, and it would be such a clear 1v1. So actually, in total, he's prevented what will be, we'd say 0.68 xg of chances occurring due to his sweeping, which is, close to being a whole goal. And given Manchester United only won the game 3-1 with a goal in the last minute, those sweeper clearances were actually pivotal and at really important moments in the game that allowed Manchester United to go on and get the victory.
Now, I love this kind of stats, because when you look at, goalkeeping Instagram, it's all about big saves, top hand saves, top corner. If you watch highlight reels, it's all about saves. But how many saves actually do goalkeepers make during a game versus all the different types of activity that we're talking about here? It's the kind of thing that goes often unnoted and unnoticed and under the radar a little bit, but is obviously incredibly important to being a positive goalkeeper.
Yeah, no, indeed. It's one of those things that I was really glad when I got the time to make the model, because it allows basically saves to be compared to these sweeper actions. So like a save that you pull out of the top corner will have some expected goals stopped, but yeah, like we just described, a sweep will also. So you can actually say, oh, this was the goalkeeper's most effective action of the game. And yeah, if you don't have to make a lot of saves, maybe that is because you're just stopping these chances ever occurring.
The other thing that Henderson did well in the Spurs game was his shot stopping. Actually, he made a couple of saves with his feet. They seemed to be quite reminiscent of kind of futsal type goalkeeping. And also, we were talking just a little bit before we pressed record on this. You made the comparison between a save that Henderson made and also the save, or I should say the save that Alisson didn't make against Watkins, and the differences between the two and the choices of technique.
Yeah, like you say, it's the Son chance where Son cuts in on his right foot and then just smashes it from pretty close range. He's well inside the Man United box, and Dean Henderson realizes it's basically right at him, and all he does is just twist his foot out, so he has a side foot rather than a foot like that, and just lets the ball hit it and just ricochet out away to safety. And it looks like a save that I'm sure the commentators will have gone, tidy save from Henderson, but it was straight at him. He couldn't not save it, blah, 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 blah. It just hit him, or one of those phrases. But actually, that decision to realise, it's the trajectory of the ball's going right at my foot. All I need to do is open my body up and let it hit me is actually vital, because often goalkeepers, even if they do go with their feet, they can often try and swing at the ball, and it ends up like hacking off their foot and still going into the goal or things like that. The fact he could be so calm just to open his body up and let it hit him was actually really important. And like you say, with that the Alisson sort of mistake that was talked about at the weekend, luckily Liverpool won, so hopefully it doesn't affect Alisson too much, because you never want to see a keeper make a mistake. But Watkins basically smashed one straight down the barrel, exactly at Alisson's right foot effectively. And if Alisson had just opened his body up and let it hit his foot, he'd have made the save. But instead, his decision was to try and go, and I think initially he wanted to try and catch it, so go down and get his hands there. And then he realised the shot was far too quick, so he swept his legs away from where the ball was going to get his hand there, and ends up only getting one hand to the ball, and it just squirms under him. So it's one of those that the commentators are going to say it's straight at him, he always was going to save it. But actually, if you don't make the correct shot-stopping technique and you don't read the ball's trajectory well enough, it's not always a trivial save. So Henderson realising that so there was one versus Harry Kane and one versus Son, that all he had to do was just open his body up and stick his foot out, was a really tidy save. And it's a really good sign of a confident goalkeeper, not being not sort of misjudging shots and trajectories, just reading it and being like, yeah, I know what to do, bang, make the save, talk about it later.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke last week about England goalkeepers, of which Dean Henderson was obviously in the squad, and mentioned just the FA TV, or it's just FA video YouTube channel, and you always get the training videos there. But Dean Henderson seems to make that decision very well, very consistent, when to use feet, when to use hands.
Yeah, so I think he is really good at using his feet. He uses his feet, I think, more than a lot of Premier League goalkeepers, and I think that is a good sign. We've discussed on this channel and on this series before that I'm a big advocate for, if it's in your foot's range and it's really quick, a foot save is always going to be a safer option than trying to sweep your legs away and get your hand there. Once it's outside your foot's range, there's no point going with your feet because you're never going to get there. But when it's in that range, a foot save is really useful to have in your locker, and Henderson definitely does. And it's quite, I guess, potentially he's learnt a lot from David de Gea, because de Gea is probably the best in the world, or maybe even the best ever at using the foot save. And he's also exceptional with both feet. So there's been saves, I think it was against Leeds, and I think there was one against West Brom, where he makes an outrageous stretch of a foot save. One of those where he has to take a little shuffle before he sticks his foot out. And I think if he goes with his hand, he's just not getting there in time. So I think Henderson's probably learnt a lot from de Gea. And just one thing I would mention is Henderson's foot save with his left foot is a lot weaker than with his right. And I picked this up when I was doing some statistics on him at Sheffield United last year. The few times he had to use his left foot for a foot save, he ends up swinging a lot more. And I think there was one against Newcastle where he just put it in the roof of his own net. And potentially another one that I can't quite remember at the moment. But it's one thing he could work on with his left foot, because De Gea is so proficient at using both feet. But with his right foot, I think Henderson, and he showed against Tottenham, he is excellent at executing a really tidy foot save on that side.
The third thing that impressed you as well for Henderson, we're just talking about using his feet. This is actually using his hands. So sweeper keeper, he's out, foot saves, but this is actually cross-claiming. And something that, again, he was very proficient at during the game was taking crosses.
Yeah, indeed. So the main sort of cross that stopped a chance occurring was pretty late on, when a floated ball came in for Gareth Bale to try and head in. And yeah, he went up and claimed it. Bale collided with him because he was still trying to head the ball. And Henderson managed to hold it, keep it tight, and drop onto the ball and take a lot of pressure off Man United at a key point in the game. And yeah, my model suggests that if he hadn't have come for that and he'd have let Bale have that free header, Bale would have scored about 24% of the time. It would be in a 0.24 XG chance. So yeah, basically a quarter of the time that goes in if he doesn't come and pluck it off Bale's head. So that was an excellent intervention. And we'll talk about it later, but Henderson's been an incredibly active goalkeeper when it comes to claiming crosses. And a lot of Man United fans that talk to me on Twitter and things, that's the area that they really enjoy about him, because as we all know, De Gea, for the wonderful shot stopper he is, he's one of those that would much prefer, when a cross comes in, if he's not 100% sure he's getting there, he's straight back on the line to defend the goal. And I think, yeah, Manchester United, when they were blessed with Van der Sar and Schmeichel, sort of loved the keeper who, when a ball's floated in, they know they're going to come and they're going to claim it. So that's definitely, been one of Dean Henderson's strengths when he was at Sheffield United, and he seems to have continued that into Man United.
Yeah, well, let's go straight onto that comparison then between De Gea and Henderson, because I mean, De Gea has been an exceptional goalkeeper for Man United for many, many years. He has been one of, if not the best. I mean, how many times has he won accolades for being a Premier League top goalkeeper? There's me top. If everyone watches or follows Exploding Heads on Twitter, go check those guys out. Now, this season, I mean, obviously last season, Henderson was at Sheffield United and performed exceptionally well. This season, De Gea has been predominantly number one. He's played, I think I've got 24 games this year in the Premier League compared to Henderson's 8. So De Gea was definitely number one, but the stats aren't necessarily in De Gea's favour, are they?
No. So yeah, if we start with the shot stopping, De Gea's made a lot of great saves this year. I'm thinking of games against Newcastle, and I think he had an excellent game against Chelsea as well. He's had some really solid shot stopping performances, but he's also made a few mistakes and let in a few soft goals that he probably shouldn't have. So at the moment, my expected saves model basically has De Gea saving about 1 goal every 10 games more than an average Premier League goalkeeper will be expected to. So yeah, he's not performing like below average, but De Gea used to be sort of saving Man United 1 goal every 2 games due to his exceptional shot stopping. When we're talking about years where he was winning Player of the Year and stuff like that, he was basically every 2 games he'd be making enough worldies to save Man United a goal more than the average keeper. So he's dropped off from that a lot. But he's still playing above average. And if we compare that to Henderson in his 8 games he's played, he's actually been saving at basically 1 goal every 5 games above average. So almost twice as good as De Gea has been in terms of shot stopping. But one thing to be cautious with there is that Henderson's is a much smaller sample size, like you said, 8 games to 24. But what Henderson does have in his favour is he had a whole season at Sheffield United where his shot-stopping numbers actually matched De Gea in that 2017-2018 season where he won Player of the Year and so almost single-handedly got Manchester United to finish second in the league. So it's not unexpected that Henderson could keep up this form and continue outperforming current David de Gea levels of shot-stopping.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal stat. That's blown me away a little bit, John. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, we all know that Henderson's a good goalkeeper. He's proved it at Sheffield United, but there were some question marks about whether or not he could take over the number one at Man United. Now, there's a really good clip that's been doing the rounds on Twitter. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it's from Henderson, I think from 2017, is it? Maybe even a little bit before. And he's saying, I want to be number one by the time I'm 23, and I want to be England's number one, I think he says, by the time I'm 24. So
indeed, and he's definitely got the confidence. And I think that's a really nice segue into we've talked about shot stopping comparison. Let's talk about the cross-claiming comparison between De Gea and Henderson. And I think the confidence is a big part of this. He thinks he could be and should be England's and Man United's number one. And I think that confidence is driving his decision making. Because if we look at some of the graphics of all the crosses Henderson has claimed so far for Manchester United, you can see there's a fair few of them outside the 6-yard box and quite wide. And he's coming for and preventing about 1.6 chances every game, because he's basically always wanting to come for crosses and always wanting to get there. And this corresponds in my model to saving Manchester United about 0.3 expected goals every single game. And if we just quickly flick over and compare that to De Gea, you can see his claims are much more all inside the 6-yard box and much more clustered towards the centre of goal. And while there are obviously more claims on here, that's because he's played so many more games. And if we look at a per 90-minute basis, he's claiming about and preventing about half as many chances due to cross-claiming as Henderson is. And again, about half as much expected goals. One thing that is interesting here that people might not realise is that Henderson, De Gea's claim success is actually higher and his catch fraction's actually higher. But actually, if you look at these two graphics, you can see that's because De Gea is claiming the ones and coming for the ones that are well within his sort of reach. Like his average claim distance is 4.5 yards, whereas Henderson's is more like, is 5.3 yards, his average claim distance. He's coming and stretching himself much more and coming much more often. And definitely a sign of his confidence. And these sort of numbers, I should probably compare. An average Premier League goalkeeper prevents about 0.2 expected goals per game due to cross-claiming. So Henderson's, about 1.5 times that, whereas De Gea's about a little bit under that, with only being 0.15 rather than 0.2.
I mean, just looking at Henderson's graphic here, that there does seem to be a good mix of both catching and punching there. So that kind of suggests to me that he's happy to come within, when it's kind of more of an open cross in order to catch, but then he's also happy to come under pressure as well and have to punch, which is obviously very, a very favourable position to be in. But there are those two red stars sitting right in the middle of the goal, which are sort of, 3-4 yards out from there, which are the two most dangerous places to drop really within his catch graph.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I believe they were both against Brighton and Hove Albion from corners. And he sort of didn't really decide if he was punching it or catching it, and ended up sort of spilling it on top of one was on top of Maguire, I think, and one was on top of Wan-Bissaka, and they managed to clear them. And it is just interesting. So my model says, even though he dropped those two, my model calculates that he will have gifted the opposition XG there. So that will be negative XG prevented. But he claims enough to make up for those spills. But it will be interesting to see what the sort of media narrative was if they'd have got tapped in. Because I guess one of the other bonuses of my model is, if that does get tapped in, my model doesn't give it extra criticism. It will just say, no, by coming for that and missing it, he turned a 30% chance into a 60% chance. So that's only minus 0.3 off the maths. It doesn't matter that it actually got scored. I don't care. I just care about the sort of level of probability that it would be scored. So it would be interesting to see if the narrative would be Henderson's awful at claiming crosses rather than Henderson's good if he'd have dropped those. But indeed, that is one thing to be wary of, that Henderson has been a little bit untidy, but when you come for so much, you're always going to have a few moments of untidiness. And actually, overall, the good definitely outweighs the bad, and he's doing better than average, whereas De Gea's crossing numbers and XG prevented from crosses is below average.
Saying confidence is a big factor, a big say into cross-claiming. What about sweeping chances?
Yeah, and this is another thing that's been going on Twitter as well. Henderson claims he's one of the fastest players in Manchester United's squad. So when you think about the fact there's Rashford and Greenwood and all those sort of players that they've got, that is also another big claim. But he clearly, like you said, with the video that's been going around, he has the confidence and believes he's an exceptional athlete and good enough to be Man United's number one and England's number one. So yeah, with the through balls intercepted, we can again have a look at the through balls Henderson's intercepted in his 8 games and that graphic. And you can see we're talking about 1.5 chances every game he'll prevent by rushing out and making one of these clearances. And that'll correspond to about 0.15 xg, so a chance that's worth 15%. So a 15% chance of going in. He'll stop every single game by doing this. And the cool thing here you can see is his sweep success so far is 100%. So every time he's rushed out, no one's ever nicked it round him or dribbled round him, and he's never come out, cleared it straight to the opposition for a long range sort of tap in, as we've seen happen to Ederson a few times over the years. And the other interesting thing is you can see that the points are all yellow when they're outside the box, and he basically is just rushing out and just smashing it as far as he can. He's not trying to do anything fancy. He's just making sure he gets there first and just hammers it away. Whereas he'll be diving at feet and catching the sort of 3 white stars in the box. But if it's outside the box, he'll just come and smash it.
If we could then go from Henderson's graph into De Gea's graph, there's differences again, isn't there?
Yeah, so De Gea, again, he's actually much tidier. So De Gea does rush out of it. So one thing I think Manchester United fans and some people in the general sort of media are a little bit critical of De Gea and say he doesn't sweep up much. But that maybe have been true for the last few seasons. But for this season, that isn't true. You can see we've got a good cluster of these stars, these pressurized sweeps that prevent chances outside the box. He does often come and rush out. But one of the biggest differences is when he does this, he's much tidier than Henderson. He doesn't just try and smash it. He'll try and rush out and then maybe play a side-footed pass to one of his centre-backs or a full-back, so Man United can retain the ball. He does clear it on occasion, as you can see with those 2 points. And again, he's got a few in the box where he's rushed out and dived at people's feet to stop chances occurring. But the main thing here is just it looks like there's a lot more points on De Gea's, but he's played so many more games that actually he's only preventing chances of 0.6 chances every 90 minutes, which corresponds to an XG of 0.07. And if we compare that back to Henderson's, it's basically like half of what Henderson's doing. Yeah. Henderson's twice as active when it comes to sweeping up. So I don't think, and again, if you look at the average distance the sweep is from goal, we're talking about 28 yards for Henderson, whereas De Gea's more like 24 yards. So again, Henderson's playing higher, allowing Man United to play a higher line and coming more often, which is going to obviously give security to Maguire and Lindelof when he's doing that.
Yeah, maybe that's the next bit of research that you can get into is how high Man United line is with De Gea versus Henderson. Might be a little bit more difficult in order to quantify and get the data for, but that'd be a really interesting point, because then that obviously that 5 yards, 4 or 5 yards, then 4 or 5 yards, 4 or 5 yards, it all makes a bit of a difference, doesn't it? And I'm not sure how quick Man United are as a 2 centre-half pairing there, especially, is Maguire quick? I'm not sure about that. He doesn't look the most mobile. I'm sure he's one of those players. I don't watch him week in, week out, but I'm sure he's one of those players who's deceptively quick, or might be quicker over a larger period, a larger distance and whatnot. But even those 3, 4, 5 yards of Henderson playing higher has got to have so much of an impact of Man United higher up the pitch.
Yeah, no, indeed. Like you say, it's not going to help the fact that Maguire probably doesn't want to be chasing strikers back towards his own goal, because he's not a Van Dijk type centre back who backs himself in a 1v1 race with anyone. Maguire's more of a sort of intelligent centre back who's nipping in front of the striker, winning the headers, getting the ball and playing with it, rather than sort of bullying them in a sort of physical out and out race. So he's definitely happy not to be constantly running back towards his own goal. But also, like you say, if you can play higher, it means he can concentrate on defending a smaller area. So he can be way more aggressive, knowing that if they do lob it over his head, Henderson's going to be there to sweep up. He's not always, I don't want to be quite aggressive. Maybe I don't want to get touch tight, because if I do get too tight, they're in behind and I've got a problem. So yeah, I can definitely see it helping Manchester United defensively, having a goalkeeper who's much more willing to sweep and also claim crosses.
Yeah. Now, John, the final question I'm going to ask you, because it's been incredibly insightful, but you put out a tweet, was it at the beginning of the season or the end of last season, just talking about this? And you said that you'd send De Gea, oh sorry, you'd send Henderson out on loan again in order to get more experience and whatnot. Then at the end of the season, you'd be selling De Gea and you'd be bringing Henderson in to be number one for the start of next season. Do you still stand by that, or has your opinion changed over the course of this season?
Indeed, I think I do still basically stand by that, because while Henderson hasn't gone out on a loan, I think what has happened with De Gea's wife having a baby and De Gea taking some time off, and also De Gea having a little bit of an injury in certain parts of the season, it's allowed Henderson to sort of have a thing that's better than a loan, and that's playing for Manchester United for a little sustained period of time to see if he can do it. And my caveat with that tweet you mentioned was always, if Henderson can play at the level he played at Sheffield United, so put up those sweeping, cross-claiming and shot-stopping numbers, and this year he's definitely matched those numbers and sort of potentially gone a little bit beyond. And it was also caveated with, if De Gea stays at the same level he has been the last few years, rather than the sort of 2017-18 level he was putting up. And again, De Gea's done that this year. If we just look at the sort of aggregated numbers, if you look at shot stopping, 1v1s, crosses and sweeping, the sort of big areas where a goalkeeper can make a difference, Henderson's sort of saving Man United an extra 0.4 goals every game versus an average Premier League keeper put in all those situations. And De Gea saving Manchester United an extra like 0.1 goals per 90 minutes put in all those situations. So Henderson's done better in his 8 games. He's been much more of a positive impact than De Gea has this year anyway. So I do believe that, if Manchester United can, start Henderson as their number one from next year and sell De Gea, that would be a good deal for them. Because my only worry is the sort of what happened at Arsenal with Martinez and Leno. I feel that there is enough data now with Henderson to suggest that he can do it for a sustained period. Whereas Arsenal obviously thought, while Martinez was clearly outperforming Leno, Arsenal obviously thought, well, we've had Leno for 2 years and he's been an above average Premier League keeper, whereas Martinez for 3 months has done it. So do we really want to risk that? Not having enough data to be like, oh, he might just fall off a cliff, he might not be that level. Maybe we just go with this safe option of Leno. But I don't think that's an option for Man United, because De Gea is so much older than Henderson. I don't think they can go for a safe option and let Henderson leave and go to another club, because if they do that and Henderson ends up being, like he wants to be, England's number one and one of the top keepers in the Premier League, if Man United just let him go to a rival, that would be disastrous, assuming De Gea is going to retire in 4 or 5 years anyway. And Henderson's got probably a decade at least ahead of him. So I still stand by that. And I would think that at the end of the year, if one of them has to leave, if they both want to fight it out, that's fine. But if one of them is like, if I'm not number one, I'm leaving, I think Man United do have to let, who has been a great servant and has won Player of the Year, I don't know how many times for Man United, I think they're going to have to let him go.
Yeah, that would start the goalkeeping roundabout going, wouldn't it, with De Gea on the move. And then obviously Man United would need a replacement in some way, because De Gea won't sit on the bench surely and be number 2 in there. So then it's who then fills that void, and we start those little games playing across the goalkeeping world. John, thank you very much. Actually, before we go, because one of the questions actually that I'm not going to ask now, but we might have to ask at some point, is about the Euros. Now, we asked that question last time, and that was about who's going to play from the goalkeepers. Nick Pope basically being number 1, it looks like, and Jordan Pickford. But if Dean Henderson's now going to get a run of games, is he going to come into the question, into the mix as well?
Yeah, we'll see. I think if he can keep up this sort of form, he's got a very good shout. And Southgate has occasionally put in a goalkeeper at the last minute. I don't think Pickford had that many England caps before he started the World Cup. So, that'll be something interesting.
Right, if you're not following John on Twitter already, make sure that you do. His handle is up in the corner there. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe and all that jazz to the channel. More content coming soon. See you soon.